Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Metropolitan Republican Club's webinar series. My name is Krisha Lenzo, and on behalf of the Met Club Board, we are so happy to have you join us tonight. As a reminder, we have a donation link in our live chat, and we hope you'll consider making a contribution to help support our club and content like this. Tonight, it is an honor and a pleasure to have Kim Klacik joining us. Armed with the truth and a viral campaign, Kim Klacik took the 2020 election cycle head-on, gaining support nationwide. Though she lost in an undesirable outcome, Kim knows all too well what it takes to keep her head held high and continuing to push forward against all odds, especially now more than ever. Now she is president of the PAC Red Renaissance, and Kim and her team has been pushing forward to support candidates across the country that are just as determined as she is to flip the House red in 2022. So with that, Kim, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So talking about that campaign and everything you did with a viral video, we have to start there, of course. As we are based in New York City, crime rates have risen dramatically. Even just this past weekend, there was a shooting in Times Square that really hurt our city tremendously in terms of the general sense of well-being. But your video in Baltimore touched on that very same subject about what it means to live in a Democratic-run city. So can you talk a little bit about what went into your ad and your video and in your message overall as to what it means to live in a city run by Democrat leaders, not Democratic. I like to make that distinction because we're all Democratic, elected, but Democrats really are who they are.
Yeah, no, thank you so much again for having me. Baltimore City, unfortunately, has been run by Democrats for over 50 years. So that means like the mayoral office, city council, everybody, even in Congress, it's all been Democrats. And so when you have that one party mob rule, it kind of breeds corruption. And I like to tell people, even if it was a Republican side, it might do the same thing, So it's good to kind of mix it up. And not have all these hands handling the money that are basically friends. And so we see millions upon billions of dollars has been poured into Baltimore City. We had the riots here back in 2015 after the death of Freddie Gray. And President Obama and Congressman Elijah Cummings, the late Congressman Elijah Cummings, they secured over $15 million for Baltimore City. But here it is in 2021, and we still have no idea where any of that money went. And so I think a lot of people, especially in West Baltimore, are kind of wondering, if federal funds are coming in, why isn't my quality of life getting any better? And that really is because of corruption. And so a big part of my campaign was trying to follow the money. And then on top of it, it was kind of like just trying to show and educate people in the area. I know you've been voting for Democrats. It's a D+30 district.
Right.
At the same time, maybe I can convince you or persuade you to vote otherwise, and that would be in your best interest. So, we talk about the school system and the poor education. I talked about school choice, which I think would be much better here in Baltimore. And so, we just got out there. We really hit the ground running. As you mentioned, our campaign ad was, it was like the big hurrah for us.
Yeah.
That went out in August, and it got the attention of President Trump, his sons, Don Jr., Eric Trump. And we were so grateful that they really retweeted it and they supported us through the entire run. But, like you said, unfortunately, it didn't do the job. But we knew that, in this district and many other districts that have been under Democrat rule for so long, it's going to take some chipping away. It's not going to happen overnight. And so that's what we did. And that's why, I started the PAC, so we can also help other candidates across the country that are pretty much in the same situation.
Definitely. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, we're still chipping away. I mean, there's still very much this movement, the defunding the police, the anti-police movement. What has it been like in Baltimore right now on the ground with people's perception of the police?
Yeah, so it's been horrible here, unfortunately. We had our mayoral election the same time, November 3rd, and unfortunately, they voted for a progressive mayor. And I don't know if you noticed, and you probably have in New York, but all of these areas that have progressive mayors and crime and violence have gotten out of control. Mm-hmm. So, we already had historic numbers as far as 10 times the national homicide rate, but we're actually exceeding that now. And so here we are in May, and we're already over 120 murders. Just 2 weekends ago, we had a mass shooting, but you didn't hear about it on national news because this is something that happens often here. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are living in these neighborhoods in close proximity. And so you have some people that are afraid to leave their home. You have some people that tell you, I don't even want my kids walking outside, because unfortunately we have cases where kids are getting hit by stray bullets, because these aren't, it's gang violence at the end of the day. And so they're going back and forth, retaliation murders. We have repeat violent offenders on the streets. Our state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, she's also a progressive. So, their policy is really to be soft on criminals while being more harsh on law-abiding citizens. So, it's almost like the upside down world here right now.
Yes, and you mentioned Marilyn Mosby, and clearly she's been a huge part of this as well, with the crime wave and where the money's going. Who do you believe is funding her and others like her? And how does this sort of relate to the national scene more generally as to who's in charge? And we're just, criminal justice, this just seems to run amok.
Yeah, so if you look at her, I guess her FEC report, you will see that George Soros helped fund her last campaign.
Wow.
I think that happens with a lot of the progressives, right? You see a lot of this George Soros money. But unfortunately, I guess I don't understand why people continue to vote for people that clearly don't have their best interest at heart, And so when we would go around and knock doors and talk to residents, they usually said the same thing. We don't see Democrats in our community. They don't come and talk to us, but we do vote for them because, we grew up as Democrats and that's all we know. Another part of it too is honestly, when we talk to people, they would say to me, Kim, you're the first Republican I've ever actually met, And so, we also have that kind of hurdle of like saying, hey, I'm Kim, I'm a conservative. Here's what we stand for. Here's what's been going on with corruption. So there was a lot that had to go into it. And I think with Democrats, especially progressives, they come off as wanting to, be the party that helps the people, even though people don't do the research in it, they just believe the same narrative. And so, when you hear progressives like Marilyn Mosby, our Mayor Brandon Scott, or even AOC, it makes you feel good because they say all these things that sound good.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's not what's best for the people. And so, it's just really trying to combat that narrative all the time.
And definitely with Marilyn Mosby, I think she just bought a property in Florida, which just is, again, ironic since she's planning her own escape, meanwhile leaving people with this disastrous, policies and problems within Baltimore. But how are BLM and Antifa contributing to this crime and misleading their followers?
Yeah. So, again, I think it's people need to do their research on a lot of these things. Like, BLM, Black Lives Matter, they stand for really destruction of the family unit. Yeah. And we know for a fact, fatherless homes leads to kids dropping out of school. It leads to kids, going wayward sometimes, going to the streets to find, that father figure, unfortunately. And so if that is BLM's priority or mission to really, just do away with the structure of the family, we're going to continue to be in the same predicament. And so I try to tell people that all the time. But BLM, it's almost like, I know you probably saw where the founder herself bought multiple homes, and some of them, one in Malibu, which is a predominantly white neighborhood, even though she's so about Black Lives Matter, it's kind of just, for me, it's a race hustle. It's something that they do for money. Racism and that race card is only lucrative really in America. And so when I talk to people about BLM, I just say, look, this is what they stand for. And you have to understand that there's nothing really in the end game. What is their list of demands? What is it that they want to change? We talk about police reform that needs more funding. They're saying that we should defund police, so it's like, well, that doesn't even help their mission or cause. So I just try to explain to people that it doesn't make much sense.
And there's a lot of problems with BLM too, in terms of some of the rhetoric, especially now with breaking news happening in Israel with Hamas and a lot of the anti-Semitism around the world. Democrats certainly have had a part of that with the, promoting some of this rhetoric. How is it that Ilhan Omar and the Radical Squad have allowed so much power and, coming to them, and how have they obtained this? And it's for a supposedly moderate party.
Yeah, and so I actually tweeted about this morning.
I saw. For
for me, it's kind of like, the Democrats, they try to hold on to this establishment, right? I think that's why they end up with Joe Biden. They still have Nancy Pelosi. They still have Chuck Schumer. For the Democrats, they're there until they die, really, right? Maxine Waters, we saw Congressman Cummings, Congressman John Lewis. It's like they hold on to these establishment leaders, and they don't try to bring in the next generation. And I don't want to see that for the GOP. I think that's why the squad is such a force, right? They know how to take advantage of social media. They know what, things to say. So they get more ratings, they get more TV time. And so for me, I think that's why they kind of have this, infighting right now, because as you said, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she basically is talking about her support for Hamas right there in the open on Twitter. And then, you see Nancy Pelosi and others saying, we condemn what's going on, we support Israel. And so you see the Democrat Party is so fractured in that way. But I don't think the establishment has a way to get a handle on the socialists and that younger generation in the squad.
Now, you touched on at the beginning within your video, you talked about school choice and the importance of, the next generation and educating them so they know how to combat a lot of these ideological, playbooks that the Democrat is supporting, Democrats more generally supporting. In terms of school choice, and in terms of critical race theory, what is your view on critical race theory, and would you call it racist in and of itself?
It's definitely racist. And I say critical race theory is a conspiracy theory. It makes absolutely no logical sense, right? Basically they want to say that white people are the oppressors and Black people are being oppressed. It makes no sense. And then they say, your success depends on the color of your skin in this country. And I always say, I'm like, well, that's impossible, right? Because the most successful ethnic group in America right now are the Nigerians. Second to that, the Kenyans. Now, these are African immigrants, by appearance are Black. And they are successful because they value education, hard work, and what's going on within the home. Parents are involved in their kids' education. They're very involved in their lives, and they usually they're very for two-family households or two-parent households, right? And so for them, that's the big key. That's what makes you successful in this country, is when you have those things behind you. And they talk a lot about, even with critical race theory, this whole thing with equity. We hear that a lot. Right. And for them, that means that they're looking for an equal outcome, which is impossible to achieve, right? Someone's always going to outwork the next person. You're not going to have an equal outcome ever. And so for me, again, it's like a conspiracy theory. I don't know why we're chasing this. I myself have a biracial daughter. What am I supposed to teach her, when it comes to critical race theory?
Right.
So hopefully we'll do away with this soon. Even right now, traveling with my pack, I talk about it all the time. And hopefully, we won't see it in schools coming around in the fall.
Especially now during COVID, we've actually, I think a lot of the hypocrisy has been exposed here in New York in particular with religious gatherings. And it just, again, we have peaceful protests are allowed, yet people are not able to gather to celebrate, their religion, or even to see, loved ones who are passing away, et cetera. But how has COVID, in your eyes, awakened people to this type of discrimination that we're seeing as to what's allowed and what's not?
Yeah, well, and I love that you mentioned that, because you can't go worship, but you can go to the casino, right? That's so interesting to me. But, I talked to a lot of parents today, and a lot of them do say, you know what, if my child didn't have that online learning, I probably wouldn't really know exactly what's going on as far as the curriculum in class. So I think a lot of parents try to pay attention to what was going on online, that saw all of the things that their child was being taught that they shouldn't be teaching in school at all, like critical race theory,
right?
Like this whole thing that we're doing right now with gender studies. So a lot of parents now, I think, want to get more involved in their school boards, which I am very happy about. And, there's a silver lining here, even though it's been awful, there's a silver lining in that part of it. But for us, in Baltimore, many restaurants, many small businesses were locked down for a very long time. And there's, a lot of businesses that won't reopen, unfortunately. So, we've been hit hard too. And, what's interesting about it, even though with all the deaths there in New York, we'll actually, we have been locked down longer than you guys have. And so I find that interesting. But, for us, I think it's more political. The more they can keep Baltimore City locked down, I think they're hoping the less murders, the less crime and violence, because people aren't out and about.
Wow, that's really, really incredible. You mentioned your daughter and your beautiful daughter. What do you say to her when we're in the middle of COVID? We're dealing with all of these race issues that have come about. What sort of what do you teach her about this country and your values, and to give her a sense of hope?
Yeah, so my daughter right now is 4 years old. We're very fortunate enough to send her to private school. So she doesn't have, they don't talk about this kind of thing. They talk about religion, and then they do the basics, right? Math, reading, writing, all that good stuff. But it is difficult, because I'll never forget, it was Dr. Seuss, like Read Across America week. And Dr. Seuss's birthday was that day, and they had all the kids dress up as book characters. And so I dressed Olivia up as Dr. Seuss. And here I am looking onto Twitter and realize apparently Dr. Seuss is racist, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Of course I still sent her to school. Of course she was still a Dr. Seuss. She had a great day because her school doesn't focus on things like that. But I couldn't help but think, if she went to public school, what would that conversation been like? Would she have been feeling bad about herself or her choice in costume? So it makes me wonder, what are other kids being exposed to? Luckily, like I said, Olivia is 4 years old, so we keep her kind of sheltered away from that. And we talk to her about everything. She knows Joe Biden's the president. She knows there was President Trump. She knows before that was President Barack Obama. And we teach her to respect the office of the president, no matter who's there. But I think most parents are like that. We're not trying to, push our kids with this divisive or hatred narrative. So hopefully we'll continue down that route, but you never know, right? When they start watching so much television and talking to other kids on social media.
And as you mentioned, Dr. Seuss is now racist, and that's a huge part of this cancel culture movement, which just anything now you can be canceled for. There, we have the corporations, Disney and Nike, who, while they're so quote unquote woke or doing, social justice move, going about and espousing these beliefs, yet they themselves are involved in having the Uyghurs and really suppressing people in their factories. How can we expose this hypocrisy, and what can we do?
Yeah, well, I think, what you're doing is great, just talking about it and informing people. I would say that's probably the biggest thing I learned while campaigning. A lot of people really are ignorant to the facts, and we live in a time where the media doesn't really give us all the facts. So that's why shows like these are so important, because, here we talk about the facts. Wherever they lead, we still talk and discuss them. And so that's what we have to continue to do, is make sure that people understand what's going on. I always believe if you lay out the facts and let other people, come to their own conclusion, then, you're doing the right thing.
And in that same vein, do you think the U.S. should participate in the Olympics in Beijing, given everything that's been happening against the Uyghurs, against human rights violations, not to mention what we're now finding out about the coronavirus?
I know. It is such a tough thing to even think about or talk about. It's like I think about, I have friends that went off to play in the Olympics, way back when, because I'm old now. But, I think about that experience for them and how that shaped their lives and how amazing that was, but at the same time, you're right. What do we do in this situation? And it's unfortunate, because I think right now we have a president that will not lead us in the right direction, or even, give us food for thought and maybe come up with an idea that the majority of the country can agree on. It seems very, I don't want to say the word dictatorship right now, but it kind of does feel that way. And Joe Biden, he stepped in, did a bunch of executive orders, and I think that he's probably going to decide one way or the other. But, again, I don't want to take that opportunity away from so many athletes that, this was their big moment in life. And so, it's tough to think about that.
It's a tough balance for sure because, on the one hand, the Olympics does bring the world together, but on the other hand, it's at what cost and who are they promoting in
Right.
this way?
Yeah.
Another topic that's been coming out with, a lot of the wokeness that we're seeing is the recent CIA initiative,
Gosh.
talking about people. Yeah. Can you explain that and your take on it?
Yeah. Excuse me. So
No.
unfortunately, I've been watching the CIA recruitment videos,
Hmm.
and it's so interesting because right now we're dealing with the hacking of the Colonial Pipeline, right?
Yeah.
We should be recruiting people based on the fact that they can, properly gather intelligence,
Mhm.
someone that's qualified for the job. Had the CIA been focusing on that, perhaps maybe we would have saw this hack coming, right? So I don't know why, excuse me, sorry, that we're getting
That's
to
okay.
a place where we're talking so much about diversifying the workforce
Mhm.
instead of talking about who's really qualified for the position. And I used to talk about this a lot when it came to Joe Biden. I don't know if you remember when he was picking his VP, there was this hashtag that was going around saying "Win with Black women," and so he was picking between three Black women for his vice presidential pick. He never talked about how they were qualified for the position. It was always about their color.
Mhm.
And I think, where are we going with this, right? Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream that we would stop doing stuff like this.
Sure.
And here we are, still pushing this and in the opposite direction. And so I don't know how you feel about VP Kamala Harris. I'm very disappointed. I know that we have a crisis at the southern border. I've been down there myself. The fact that she was appointed to do something about it, she hasn't been. I just hope, and I hope that the CIA will take a look at what they're doing too. It's just kind of like, look, this is not about feeling, inclusive, right? This is about getting people in these positions that will protect us. This is about national security. This is about, our safety in this country, which I am almost certain, which the government kind of owes us. So,
Yeah.
it's tough to watch this, but I'm hoping we'll turn the corner sooner or later. We see in New York and here in Baltimore, they're talking about funding the police again. So maybe they'll start to get how these decisions aren't helping us at all.
And speaking of national security, in your opinion, what is the biggest threat we are currently facing at this moment? Clearly, we have a lot, but what right now is the most pressing?
Well, I would say what's going on at the southern border. I'm glad that the state of Arizona is taking the Biden administration to court and is trying to do something with the Department of Homeland Security. You have over 1,000 people coming across the border in one day, right? So every day we have all these people coming across. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We're not vetting them. We're not trying to see whether or not, who they are, where they come from. Of course, there are people coming across that are seeking refuge here, but people have to understand those that they're seeking refuge from are also coming across because we're not vetting them and we're just allowing them to come in. So right now, I think Arizona is now suing the Biden administration for stopping on building the wall. They
Mhm.
said it's putting a lot of pressure on their infrastructure. And then, of course, he reversed the policy of remain in Mexico before you appear in court, which is very important. That's what Trump put in place. And so I think that is, something that we should be focused on. I read a couple weeks ago they caught an MS-13 member that had already been deported twice. He was crossing the border. They did catch up with him, thankfully, but we have a lot of criminals coming across the border, and we have no idea who they are. So to me, that's the most pressing issue right now.
And speaking of threats, today some might say Liz Cheney was a threat to the Republican Party and a lot of what she believed in and how she organized people against President Trump. What's your take on the future leadership for the Republicans and just Liz Cheney and people like her more generally who have in many ways fractured us?
Yeah, so I would say, you know what, I'm so for getting the next generation of leaders, to take over.
Yeah.
I'm not for cancel culture, so I would never say Liz Cheney. I I do think she can have her own opinions,
Mhm.
but at this point in time, I think we need to move forward. A lot of people were very disappointed about, President Trump not winning or whatever happened in that election. And so, we have a lot of people now, I think their eyes are open. They're not pro establishment, they're not pro deep state. They are for America first. They are for we the people. And I think, it would be best for us as Republicans to get leaders in the party in those positions that actually have the same views as most of us, which is, what is best for the people right now. And so I like the fact that they're talking about Congresswoman Elise Stefanik.
Yes.
I know she's in New York, and I know I watched her pack and how many women she got across that are now in the House. I think she did an excellent job with that. And so I think she's a leader. I think she's a natural born leader. And so I'm happy that they're talking about, putting her in a leadership role.
Well, you're certainly a natural born leader and a future face of the Republican Party. But in your opinion, what do you see the future of the party looking like and taking shape going forward now, especially given the recent Liz Cheney news?
Yeah, I think it's time to move past that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
No,
I was sick all last week. No,
no,
we have
to. You're so great. You're so busy all the time too. My goodness, mom, saving our country.
Yeah.
I don't know. Our future's in your hands, Kim.
Thanks. No, thanks. So
Really.
I do think we need to move past, what we did in the past, right? That whole narrative I think that the Democrats push is the Republican Party is so racist, which I know is not true. But I think the more that we do show that we do have diversity within the party, since that's what a lot of independents and modern Democrats focus on, I think the more that we show that, the more that we might persuade more of those individuals to vote for the Republican Party moving forward. And so that's why, I started my PAC. We have a lot of candidates across the country that are minorities, that are very conservative, and, they just need a little bit of help. I know what it's like to be in that position, trying to reach out to the RNC and nobody's like taking your phone call. So, we're just trying to help them even before, their primaries, just because we just think that they're great candidates. So we want to get behind them and fully support them. But I think once we show that this is a party where it's like a big tent where, we've got lots of people from all walks of life that are involved in the GOP, then, the Democrats can't use that narrative back at us, because right now that's really all they have, right?
Right.
When it comes to policy or anything else, we have them beat. And so, as soon as we get more people that are showing, look, this is a diverse party, this is not a party of racism or David Duke or anything like that. And so I think the more we talk about it, the best. I love the fact that Senator Tim Scott did the rebuttal for the joint address.
Yeah,
he did a great job. Yeah, awesome. He was really good.
He was so great.
He was. And so I say all the time, a Governor Ron DeSantis and a Senator Tim Scott ticket, I think would be an amazing presidential ticket in the future.
For sure. In speaking of future elections, though, the question of election integrity is still very much part of our day-to-day and what that means going forward in 2022 even. Can we trust the outcome of elections now? I mean, so many Republicans feel disenfranchised.
Yeah, no, definitely. I helped out on the Senate Georgia runoff race, back in January. And everybody in Georgia that we met was like, I don't even know if I should go vote. It's probably not going to count, We're like, no, you got to get out there. But, we got to have more people at the polls. We have to make sure that poll workers from each side of the aisle are able to be there to watch what's going on. I don't love the unsolicited mail-in ballots. In my race, we did well, somewhat well on election night, but the next day we had this huge mail-in ballot dump. And we're just kind of like, really? All these people voted? They didn't verify the signatures on them. The voter rolls were not cleared. That needs to happen also. So there's these things that we can do. Voter ID is huge. I wish everybody would get on board with that. Yep. There's things that we can do to improve it. It's just, convincing some of these governors and convincing voters that that's what we need so things aren't fraudulent moving forward. It's so crazy to me because for 4 years, all we heard about was Russia, 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 and how the Democrats wanted to make sure that, elections moving forward weren't fraudulent. We saw what went on, even just in the state of Georgia this past election cycle, and they act like, they could care less, and it's like, we got to move forward and safeguard our elections, even when your party wins, like we need to be on the same page with this.
And that's the whole thing. It's like, it's not like the Republicans were the first to question the election. I mean, the Democrats are saying back, previous election cycles, not my president with Trump, not my president. Yet when we even question, we're suppressed. So that's a huge part of it. So will you be running again?
Well, FEC is always watching. We got so many rules. When you have a PAC, you can't really announce your run or anything like that. But we look at it as this: 22. We only have 5 House seats to flip. Even after redistricting, my district, Maryland 7, will be redistricted in September. Even after redistricting, it'll still be like a D plus 26, right? It still will be something crazy. So, I've been talking to my team, and it's like, why don't we just continue to put in the groundwork, help these other candidates get across in 22, and then maybe look at it again in 24. We do have someone running the numbers on a Senate seat here in Maryland. So we'll see what comes back on that. And, I'm always ready to run. We left money in the bank to do so because we had some amazing donors and supporters. And so I want to make sure that, we give it our all every time we go.
Most definitely. And you mentioned the PAC, but can you tell us a little bit more about your current PAC that you're working on, and how people can donate and get involved?
Yeah, so Red Renaissance, if they go to redrenaissance.com, you'll see our list of candidates. We have 12 candidates that we're working on with right now before the primaries. I'm sorry. We tell them to donate directly to the candidates. We even have their websites all linked on there. So that they, make sure that they get the money themselves. But, we're really just trying to help them. We help them with media contacts, raising their profile. I've been traveling, doing fundraisers for them because unfortunately it costs a lot of money to run in these races.
Yeah.
So when you look at like Willie Montague in Florida's District 10, he's going to be running against hopefully Val Demings. She's a congresswoman there, very against Trump. But it looks like in District 10, people are ready for a change. You got Carla Spalding. She's also in Florida. Alex Stovall in Arizona. You've got Teddy Daniels in Pennsylvania. Billy Primp in New Jersey. Darius Mayfield in New Jersey. I mean, there are just so many great candidates out there that are really just ready to give it their all. We're having a big launch party here in Baltimore next Thursday, May 20th. And Congressman Burtis Owens is coming to speak and open that up for us. So, we're excited. It's like, look, this is the Republican Party. It is diverse. It is, whatever they want to call it. We are all inclusive if that's what they want to see. But, I think we're going to be able to flip the House in 22. And that's our main goal. That's our main focus.
Well, I hope that's the case. And I think with you at the helm, for sure, we have a fighting shot. Kim Klacik, you are the future of the Republican Party. I can't even, express enough how much you've done for us, or generally just even the support, you've given to all these future candidates, and what the awareness you've raised to so many key issues, especially in Democrat-run cities. But wanting to follow you, obviously, you're well known on social media, but can you tell us all of the different ways you can track the great work that you're doing?
Thank you. Yep. On Facebook, of course, we have a Red Renaissance page. Kimberly Klacik on Facebook is my personal page. And then on Instagram, Kimberly Klacik. And then Twitter, if you're okay with profanity every once in a while.
It's warranted. If it's warranted, which it is.
Yeah, it's Kim K. Baltimore is the handle on there. But yeah, if you want to go to redrenaissance.com and just check out our candidates, and even, send us a message and let us know, do you see a candidate in your area that should get some more support? If you feel like their profile, needs help raising, we'll do that. We're still working with Arsenal Media and Benny Johnson. He's still doing a bunch of campaign ads. So we're still all working together. This is about really getting the House flipped and really, just taking control of this country again.
Most definitely. Kim Klacik, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, you are always welcome in person. We'd love to have you at the Met Club, and we'll be supporting you and following you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a nice night.